Good evening from Toronto, Canada, and good morning from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Good afternoon and good morning also to you, Sumaira.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So tourism is the third biggest contributor to Malaysia's GDP after manufacturing and commodities. In 2018, this sector contributed around 5.9% to the total GDP. In recent years, the tourism industry in Southeast Asia had experienced significant growth, and Malaysia was keen to capitalize on this trend. The Visit Truly Asia Malaysia 2020 campaign was launched in the hopes of reaching the ambitious target of 30 million visitors and 100 billion Malaysian ringgit in tourism receipts for 2020. Malaysia's capital city Kuala Lumpur ranked amongst the top 10 most popular city destinations for overnight travelers worldwide in 2018. In that year, the international visitor spending in Kuala Lumpur also reached a 9-year high. However, the outbreak of COVID-19 has led for the authorities to rethink their tourism strategy going forward with a fresh perspective. Talking to us about this and many other fascinating facets of this truly Asia country is His Excellency Dato Dr. Noor Zari Bin Hamat, Secretary General, Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture. Welcome to our show.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm really delighted that you are here to talk about this very important country. So let's get started.
Okay.
2020 was to be the big year for Malaysia's tourism sector. Hotels and airlines were expecting millions of guests. What came was a virus instead. And with it, the worst crisis Malaysia's tourism industry has ever faced. This year, tourism was supposed to boom like never before. Worldwide, the advertising drive for the big campaign Visit Malaysia 2020 was set in motion. The Southeast Asian country was expecting around 30 million tourists and revenues of 20 billion or 21.5 billion US dollars. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has put a dampener on all of this, particularly affecting the more than 3.5 million people working in the tourism industry. What's the outlook for tourism and hospitality moving forward? And how is your country responding to the current situation?
First, thank you, Sumaira, for having me here this morning. Just to start, I'd like to mention that our campaign to promote the Visit Malaysia Year 2020 began as early as 2018, with 2 years to start the campaign. No? And we are very optimistic at that time, like you mentioned, that we are ready to receive 30 million tourists with the receipt for about 100 billion ringgit. We are very optimistic. And even the figures in January shows that the numbers is increasing as compared to the same period of time in 2019. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected not only Malaysia, but also almost every country in the world. As you mentioned that as a people-oriented industry, tourism is one of the hardest hit economic sector and expected to be the last to recover. Right. And in fact, estimation by the UN WTO predicts that declines of 58% to 78% in international arrivals this year, depending on the pace of reopening of borders. Meanwhile, recovery of international tourism demand is expected to start in the fourth quarter of 2020 and mostly in 2021. That is the global scenario. Now let me focus on Malaysia. In the case of Malaysia, the estimated loss for tourism and cultural industries from January to June 2020 is close to US 10.5 billion US dollar and equivalent to about ringgit Malaysia 45 billion.
Wow.
The severe impact of the pandemic to the tourism and cultural sectors in Malaysia puts millions of jobs of these industries at risk. In order to enable the country's economy to recover as quickly as possible, our approach to a safe and responsible restart of tourism involves 3 phases. which cover domestic, regional, as well as the international level. To begin with, I would like to mention here that the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture of Malaysia has identified several key strategies under our tourism and cultural recovery plan, because our ministry looks into two big elements. One is tourism, the other one is arts and cultural sectors. So in particularly, there are three objectives or three strategic plans that we have put in place. One is the restoring confidence to travel by promoting feel-good factors and success story in overcoming COVID-19. The second is the boosting domestic tourism by offering creative packages through online travel fairs. We continue the fairs, but via online. And the third is identifying short-haul markets, which are focused on cross-border tourism with countries designated as green zones. Actually, we are already starting our discussion with several green zones in neighboring countries.
Okay.
And I have three more points that I would like to raise here. The fourth is we will try to ensure sustainability of the culture and arts industry by educating and promoting interest via online platforms. We would like to consider culture and arts as one of the tourism products, the product that could attract the tourists to Malaysia. And the fifth is to leverage on smart tourism. This concept we like to introduce what we call it as a smart tourism, in order for us to optimize marketing and promotion efforts via digitalization and big data analytics. And the last one is that, of course, we will take this opportunity with this pandemic to relook the human capital of the industry, and we aim to upskill the human capitals in this industry towards a new normal while building the capacity and capability of the tourism industry operators. We are really looking into this sector, because there is no what we call it movement in tourism. We took this opportunity to relook again what should be done to ensure that the sector will move forward once the pandemic is over.
Right. And therein lies the lessons, right? Because it's very important for us to be talking to you, because Malaysia is still one of the leading countries in Asia Pacific in where sophistication of tourism services exists. So it's the other destinations, you are the role model, and they can learn from some of these new measures that you are bringing in place. Because today we are living in a world which is, everything needs to be shared. And not just the vaccine, but all of this recovery knowledge.
We're ready to share our experience here.
Absolutely. So just going forward, just as recent as in 2019, Malaysia launched the Malaysian Tourism Promotion Matching Grant Fund, aimed at marketing Malaysia as a top tourist destination in the global market. That was just last year. As part of the efforts to woo the international visitors, it was suggested that flight connectivity to high-yield markets such as China, India, and Germany. In 2020, with the outbreak of COVID-19, Malaysia introduced first a partial, then a complete travel ban for visitors from China in all of these markets. The tourism sector in Malaysia is expected to slowly recover at the end of the year and stabilize perhaps by June 2021. Do you think this rebound for these markets is going to happen if this is the period, or do you foresee earlier, later? What is your gut instinct here?
Let me start first by explaining what the government has done in order to overcome these situations. As a direct response to the crisis, I think the government of Malaysia launched three economic stimulus packages worth about 260 billion ringgit, or about 60 billion US dollar.
Right.
With three main goals here. The government is looking the packages in totality. One is to protect the social welfare. The second objective of these packages is to support the businesses. And the third one is to to strengthen the economy. And among the physical measures in these packages, if I can mention here a few, one is the moratoriums on loans and deferment of tax payments, as well as the monetary measures aimed at providing increased funding and loan facilities with low interest rates for SMEs in the tourism sector. And also the government also introduced incentives to protect jobs and employment, such as subsidies, allocation for trainings, upgrading of skills, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah.
You've got about 35% of the hotels in Malaysia are temporarily closed, around about that much, right? And
during the time, yes.
And okay, and what is equally difficult situation with all the catering industry, bars, which in this Muslim country is unique factor, you know, and is admired in Malaysia in many ways. So all of this subsidy wage program will be spent on supporting them. Has it been rolled out? Is it already coming to the industry or still sitting with the government?
There are a few packages here with regards to the tourism industry. For the first and second package is already rolled out, and we have one more to be launched. I think by the mid of July, the minister will announce one more package, what we call it as the tourism financing facilities to finance transformation. And this amount, the amount is about 234 million US dollar. And let me give you some scenario. After all these two packages that's already announced by the government, we can see the increase, the positive trend in the hotel industry. For example, in March 2020, the occupancy rate is about 18.29%. In April, it went down to 8.86%. And in May 2020, the OR occupancy rate is about 9.63%. But after we introduced the packages and some other measures, which I think I will explain later. For example, we opened the domestic movement between countries, between states, and the hotels can open their services to the public, you know? And the people can travel. And when we introduce that combination of the opening, the other measures combined with these monetary policies, we found that from 10th of 30th of June, the occupancy has increased even up to about 30% already. So this signal gives a very good indication that when we put our effort between the monetary policies or the economic incentives plus other measures, for example, allow the hotel, all of the resorts to be open to the public, we can see that there is the movement of people from they have been stranded at the home for almost 3 months. You know, when we open this, they start travel and from that.
And what about, you know, there's also your street stalls. They've been impacted. They're part of the whole attraction of coming to Malaysia, so especially at sites like the popular limestone Batu Cave. So tourists are the main source of income there. So is anything being done to protect them? Because that's, again, in Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, the street stalls are one of the main attractions, you know. So is anything being done?
We operate, but they must follow some standard operation procedures here. They must allow the social distancing. They cannot simply go and get their food there, but must be served by by the operators. There are some measures. If I can mention here, we have engaged with all the industry of the players in order to get their input and feedback in assuring that health protocols and SOPs are developed. We developed the SOP based on their request. We discussed with the operators and what they want.
Okay.
If I can mention to you.
Okay. So,
There are 13 SOPs has been approved for the reopening of the tourism sector.
yeah.
For example, hotel accommodation premises, tour operate, tour operating companies, dry and water theme parks, live performance and shows, meeting incentives, travel and trade fairs. There are among the sectors that we allow to open, but must follow certain guidelines, certain procedures, or certain activities. Yeah.
So, just moving on,
Mm.
Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin said few days back strict lockdown had cost the economy, like you have mentioned, 2.4 billion ringgit each day, and expects the unemployment rate to rise to 5.5% by the end of the year as business struggle to in a pandemic. However, he also announced the pandemic had been successfully brought under control and that
Mm.
Malaysia would enter a new recovery period until August 31st, followed by
Mm.
a normalization phase until a vaccine is ready. Delaying
Mm.
the opening of the international borders will perhaps decimate the country's industry, which employs more than 3.5 million. But is wisdom in this. Some hope the government will reassess the easing of borders sooner than August 31st. What is your advice to the industry? Why these restrictions matter? Even the economic cost is heavy.
Uh, as the situation surrounding COVID-19 improve and the infection rate in the country reduced tremendously, I think Malaysia started to ease restrictions beginning from 10th of June 2020. And in this recovery phase, most economic activities, including, as mentioned earlier, that including travel, domestic travel is allowed and tourism-related businesses may
So
resume
domestic travel
operations.
between the various regions has opened up.
Yes,
There's
yes,
no
yes.
restriction between the regions or
No,
cities. Okay.
before this, must get permissions, but now the government has opened because we believe that once we can, what I call it, we can spearhead the growth of tourism sector. Many other sectors will also grow.
All right.
And prior to the reopening of domestic tourism, preparation were made in advance to receive guests according to the requirement of the new normal and to boost confidence of travelers. Like when we always advise the players in this tourism industry that they must at all time prepare, prepare with possibility of influx of guests,
Yeah.
But even now, the hotel, I think, for almost June and July, almost fully booked. There are some hotels that their booking is almost 70% already,
Right.
domestic tourism. But now we refer only to domestic tourism because our border is still closed,
Right.
But we go ahead with the domestic tourism.
Okay. Um,
Mm.
just I want to expand a little bit on touch on the protocols because this is so important right now because you've established something like the 2020 Movement Control Order, which is referred to as MCO or PKP. It's a cordon sanitaire implemented.
Okay.
Yeah, it's implemented as a preventive measure by the federal government of Malaysia in response to the pandemic. As early as on 18th March, you already had that protocol. At that point, some countries in the world were still scratching their head to how to tackle the situation. And you guys already had this protocol running, But on May the 1st, MAH published its base guidelines for hotels designed to stay hotels into the new norm of hotel operations, benchmarked against best practices from other countries and major hotel chains around the world. Now, post-COVID, the biggest challenge will be to restore that trust of the domestic and foreign tourists. There is a Clean and Safe Malaysia campaign which is being rolled out, okay? The aim is to award certification to hotels and meet the requirements of the relevant authorities. Tell us how critical is this and how important is this rollout of the standards and what the response has been so far?
First, allow me to explain about the protocols or the SOPs as you mentioned.
Yeah.
In order for the government to approve the SOP, the SOP normally based on the discussion between the ministry and the industry players. We call the players to come and see us, and we asked from the players what they really want, and then they will, of course, they want it to be open, because if the what we call it, if we open it late, it might affect your business. But on the government side, we need also to look into the safety of the visitors, for example. And on top of that, we do establish what we call the Tourism Recovery Action Council, TRAC, to
Right.
get the views of all the players. And based on the inputs that we gathered from the players, we put it to the government, and finally the government agree and we open it. It's not simply based on the ministry itself, but it is based on the engagement between the ministry and the players. And the other thing that you did mention about clean and safe Malaysia hotel, I think this is totally the initiative by the industry. The hotels normally came together and tell us that they want to have this clean and safe campaign, and they appointed one independent consultant to advise them whether this hotel can be what we call it, can be declared as clean and safe campaign, and we support this one. It is totally the initiative by the industry. We, the government, support this industry,
Okay. Okay.
and now our company now strongly focus on confidence building, together to what we call it, to ensure that the guests are confident that Malaysia is clean and safe, and we are quite happy with the what we call it, with the role played by the private sector in Malaysia.
Okay. Thank you. That you've explained that very, very well. Just moving on to the aviation sector, International Air Transport Association has released its latest estimates, which show the global airline passenger revenues will decrease by 314 billion this year, which marks a decline of 55% compared to the previous year. Asia Pacific region will see airline revenues decline of 113 billion and see a 50% decrease in passenger demand, which is the biggest drop of all the regions. As a result of the impact, obviously the Malaysian airlines are also impacted. And there is word out there that the Malaysian government wants to push ahead with the merger of the national airline Malaysian and the low-cost airline Asia Airlines in order to save both the airlines in the crisis. How significant a move is this for the country's aviation industry? And because this may also kickstart a merger and an acquisition trend in the region as part of the survival strategy for other countries as well.
Let me explain. At the moment, we are focusing on how to ensure that the planes can fly even between the states in Malaysia. Because if the plane cannot fly and stranded at the airport, so it means that the airlines have no business. What we do now is that we call all the main airlines in Malaysia to come forward to us, and we advise them what are the efforts that when the industry and the government can do together. We can promote on behalf of them, on behalf of the airlines. And what we see from our engagement with the airlines, we found that they are willing also to take certain efforts, such as roll out several campaigns. I give you an example here.
Yeah.
So for Air Asia, for example, they came out with what we call the flash sale starting price ringgit Malaysia 129 ringgit campaign. Air Asia Unlimited Pass Cuti Malaysia. We, the government, announced the Cuti Malaysia campaign. But in this case, we get the support from Asia. The Asia introduced what we call the Unlimited Pass to support our Cuti Malaysia campaign with a very low price. And the other two airlines, Malaysia Airlines, for example, also came out with several packages starting from now until 31st of December. And what I can mention here is that based on our engagement with the airlines, from from 28th of June until July 2020, and 180,000 seats have been sold already. So it gives us some confidence that this airline will be able to fly again.
Okay. Okay.
But in terms of merger, I think there is another exercise.
Right. Of course. Of course. But I think
You are looking at the airplanes, the planes must fly to bring tourists from region to region. And what can the airlines help us and help the government and also help them on? So they came up with the campaign. Yeah, we will support the campaign and we will do whatever effort that we can to help the aviation industry.
so. I think what the message I'm getting is that you're
Mm.
more engaged right now to get these airlines up and running and let them come up with the solutions,
Yeah.
for their survival. But at the moment, the focus is to get the planes off the ground. That's the number one.
It's just one of the effort between the government and the airlines. I can mention that we have some program what we call as a joint international tourism development programs
Yeah.
between the government and the Malaysia Airlines, and
Yeah.
it's in the form of matching grant for promotion. I mean that we provide the matching grant between the government and the airlines for them to go all out in promoting the industry.
Right.
So I think it's one of the efforts.
Okay. So you've mentioned about domestic tourism again and again. So domestic tourism looks like will play a very important role in the industry's recovery. Therefore, in your social media posts, the Malaysian Tourist Board has encourages locals under the hashtag of travel later to travel in their own country.
Dream now, travel later.
Yes,
Yeah.
crisis in order to boost the local economy. On the one hand, the otherwise lively domestic traffic to the many Malaysian islands has disappeared. However, since early June, due to relaxation, have you seen a rise in this sector, and what is being done?
Let me begin by mentioning to you that the expenditure from the domestic tourism amounted to about 24 billion US dollar in 2019,
Right.
with a rise of 11.5% from the previous year. I believe this figure shows that domestic sector assumes a key role in generating income for the country. And if I can mention here, the traffic flow and the users on the highway, once what we could come out with the SOPs and relaxation of the travel between states. We from the report that we received, there are increase in terms of traffic flow and users on the highway in Malaysia. It shows that people is moving from one state to another state, and from that, that's why we still believe that domestic tourism will really help the tourism industry in Malaysia.
And that will be the key to the rise, right? But
Yes.
okay, but no strategy still be complete because you have a very strong region as well, so there is inter-region travel. So are you, without considering any safe corridors or bubbles, the idea is to pave the way for faster recovery to allow tourists from low-risk countries such as Taiwan, Vietnam, Brunei, and Australia. Would the government consider gradually opening up the country's borders to such corridors? Is this even an option, similar to Europe? But in Australia and New Zealand, they started off with the idea, but now it's on hold because of the situation in Australia. And I'm sure you are watching that closely. So what's happening there?
I think the Prime Minister also mentioned about the travel bubble. I think this is the what we call it, the present buzzword, the travel bubble.
Yes, it is the buzzword. You are right. Everybody's talking about it, but nobody knows how to go about it.
Malaysia is also talking about this, and we did discuss with our counterpart in Singapore, Thailand, Brunei.
Right.
And a few days ago, we met the Excellency Ambassador of Japan in Malaysia, and we also discussed about the same issues, how we can promote the travel between green zone to green zone. And I think if we can agree on what we call it, if we can agree on certain issues, I think what we're doing now is that we will move on by having all sorts of bilateral discussion with utmost consideration for health and immigration matters, data tracking, as well as continuous monitoring. But whatever it is, we all depend on the what we call it, on the advice by the Ministry of Health of Malaysia.
Right.
We can open,
Yeah,
but
and it
the main
takes
concern is
yeah, and it takes two countries, right? It's not just one country's
no, no,
thing. It
we
takes two
will.
countries who have to really, really
Mm,
respect each other's protocols, and
we will open, but the other side still
yeah,
doesn't allow the people to travel, so it should be
becomes tough. Yeah,
doesn't work. Yeah.
yeah, right, right,
We keep on talking with several countries, Singapore, Brunei, and Thailand, for example.
right.
And the issues that need to be harmonized is that pre-departure screening, for example, contact tracing, as well as how we are going to harmonize certification. There are among the issues that we take into account when we start discussing about this pre-departure tracing, as well as how we are going to harmonize certification, meaning that if they are already cleared of this COVID in the country, how about the certification in Malaysia, in the receiving countries? There are among the issues that we need to detail out when we discuss about this travel bubble. It's really, we are really in what we call in business these days.
Yes, it is. It is. It makes it
Very busy these days.
interesting. So I'll just fast track this. So Malaysia has ancient rainforests, critically endangered primates, and countless endemic species. Over 15,000 types of plants, flowers, and trees grow inside 130 million-year-old rainforests. Almost extinct Sumatran rhinos and critically endangered orangutans live inside the protected jungles. Endless fields of corals, green and hawk-billed turtle nests, rainforests to mangrove swamps to mountaintop habitats. Malaysia is a haven for ecotourism in Southeast Asia. Ecotourism is the country's strength and a role model for other nations. What are the SOPs being established around this critical segment?
I agree with you that ecotourism is one of the main attractions with Malaysia. We have beautiful beaches, we have beautiful jungles, everything. We have caves here. If you have been to Sarawak, we have a very beautiful cave in Sarawak. And even when this pandemic happened, we did a survey. We did a survey to see what's the pattern of movement of people, or where they want to go when the pandemic is over. And we found out that from the respondent that we received, 57% of the respondents feel that they still want to go into this or want to travel by what we call it as the ecotourism. 57% of the respondents say that they want to go and see the nature of Malaysia. But and what we are doing now is that we already have a discussion with several players with this in this industry to ensure that they keep the what they call it the attraction in a very high quality at the moment. Because when we start, we cannot effort for them to take a longer times to recover. So what they are doing now is that, or what we are doing now is we keep on engaging the players in the ecotourism to take whatever steps. And among the SOPs that we still go for what we call it social distancing. One of the preferable destination to avoid crowd, and also we still maintain strict protocols of sanitization and social distancing. I mentioned to you that we start opening some of the okay, location here, but with a very strict protocols. Protocols of safety still be the
Absolutely.
main priority.
Right, right. Okay, just my last question, and over something very important and close to my heart. Just in
Yeah.
March, at the start of the pandemic, it was announced
Mm,
that Malaysia secured 155 business events for the next 6 years.
mm,
Over the past decade, Malaysia's position as Asia's business events hub has placed Malaysia as top 35
mm,
countries for the number of meetings worldwide. Meanwhile,
mm,
Kuala Lumpur ranked top 10 for the Asia Pacific. Supporting
mm,
this are 11 major convention centers, including the largest venue, Malaysia International Trade and Exhibition
mm,
Center,
mm,
which could accommodate up to 50,000 delegates at a time. How
mm,
important is this sector, and what is being done to build trust, instill confidence, and proven reliability to an
mm.
international audience to jumpstart meetings again in Malaysia?
Just to mention to you the losses that we what we call it we experience in this industry. I agree with you that more than 110 events had been cancelled, and the amount that we what okay, the cost of the event cost us about ringgit Malaysia 1.5 billion, meaning that we lost about 1.5 billion ringgit. That's for the event itself. But if we multiply this with other what we call it spillover effects from this cancellation, I think it's more than 1.5 billion.
Oh, really?
But what we are doing now, we are starting to allow the event to start now, but with a very strict number. We allow the exhibition or meetings to be held, but with only 250 participants at this point of time.
Okay.
We, when we allow, we will observe whether it's safe or not for us to increase the number. And the other things that, besides focusing on the international MICE, we are now focusing on domestic MICE meeting, incentive, convention, exhibition. We want to promote the domestic MICE.
The corporate
And
market as well, and the local association markets.
mm,
Yeah. And you have
we
weddings as well, right? Your weddings are quite a big business.
yeah, yeah. What we are doing, we're doing now, we are trying to come up with something what we call hybrid MICE, where we have the physical plus the online
Right.
participants. But
Right.
we will start now they can start already, but with a very limited number, 250 for at this point of time. But as I mentioned to you, Sumaira, when the one from based on our observation, if the situation is good, maybe we can increase the number later on. But let's start small,
It needs to start, right? But already in
Mm,
China, they are having huge numbers. That started now.
mm,
Oh,
mm,
and I
mm,
think you are one of the first countries that I'm hearing the number of
mm,
250. I'm
mm.
talking to a lot of countries, and they're still stuck in
And now
50.
now
Yeah,
the hotels are happy. The hotels can already what we call do the meetings, seminars, but with limited number. But as I agree with you, we need to start
yeah,
somewhere at some point. If we wait for longer period, the industry will suffer. That's
absolutely.
why I mentioned earlier that whatever we do is it's based on three main objectives. One is for social welfare. The second is for to support the business, and the third is to ensure the economic growth.
Right.
Whatever the government applies in Malaysia is based on that three objectives.
And you've flattened the curve to quite a degree now, so I think
Yeah.
you're in a safe place to be able
Mm.
to say that
So, so
meeting.
after this, you what we call it must be the first one to be in Malaysia once we open the border.
Absolutely.
Samara,
Yeah.
we're waiting for you at the ministry.
Okay, I'm coming.
Okay.
I'm coming for sure.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah.
count me and
We'll
please.
take you to our latest attraction in Malaysia.
I am coming there. I
Promise
love your
you.
country. So, in closing,
Yeah.
I want to say that talking to you,
Mm.
I want to say that the people in Malaysia are some of the friendliest. We didn't really talk a lot about that,
Thank you. Thank
but
you.
but some of the friendliest I have ever come across. I never felt unsafe or threatened as a female traveling in Malaysia, as all the locals were constantly waving hello and asking where I was from. They were always willing to give suggestions, lend a helping hand, or simply flash a friendly smile.
Yeah.
Even with a language barrier, they are very warm individuals. And for that reason, besides the food, I cannot wait to get back to your country.
Okay, okay, we are waiting for you. We are
Yeah,
all here
as
waiting for
soon
you.
as we are able to travel again. Thank
Yeah.
you for being with
Thank
us.
you. Thank you.
And thank
Yep.
you.
See you again.